What's going on, VoiceOver warriors and keyboard ninjas? Welcome back to Logic.band, a place full of tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you as a blind Logic, VoiceOver, and macOS user. Remember, you can always visit Logic.band and right there on the homepage, sign up for the mailing list so that you can get a free Getting Started with Logic course. So today we're going to start a series discussing how to create a template. And this is going to basically cover everything in depth that you need to know to get started creating your own templates in Logic Pro. Now, a template is a way to have some elements in a project that whenever you pull up that template, it's going to have all the things that you need, you want, you always use, ready to go. The layout's going to be the way you want it to be, etc., so you can start creating quickly in Logic Pro. So this is going to get broken up into a bunch of parts. So part one is going to be how to start creating a template and things you may want to consider for the layout of your template. Part two is going to be about what tracks you may want to consider and how you can consider grouping and putting those tracks together in your template. Part 3 is going to discuss session players and things you might want to know about setting up session player tracks in your template. And then part 4 is going to discuss saving and updating your template. So without further ado, let's get right into it and get started creating our template in Logic Pro. What I like to do is start with one of the stock templates and just customize it for my needs a little better. And now I record a mixture of analog inputs, say guitar and bass plugged into my interface through an amp sim and virtual instruments like pianos. And sometimes I'll use software bass instead of a electric bass. And the drums are also going to be in the box inside of Logic as well. So I'm going to pick a template that uses those things, but if you're mostly a electronic musician, if you're mostly just doing stuff with your MIDI controller and you don't really have any audio tracks in your project, or the only audio track in your project is a vocal track, then by all means pick one of the electronic templates and go through those and customize those for your needs. But outside of that, I'm going to show you some other stuff that you may want to think about having enabled in your template to help your workflow go a little bit smoother. So I'm going to start here. I'm in Logic. I'm on a blank screen.
Logic Pro has no windows.
And what I'm going to do is just press Command N to bring up the dialog where we can choose a template.
Table, row 7 of 8. Project templates, move image. Selected.
And you see I'm on the project template option already, but when you bring up this dialog with Command N, if you interact with this table that it puts you on,
in table, row 7 of 8.
you can veer up or down through this list and look for project templates.
Demo project tutorial, project templates, move image.
Now, if you ever want to ever create a project from a template that you created, that you saved as a template, you have to go down to
my templates, move image.
The option that says my template, but we want to create a new template and we're going to use one of the stock Logic templates as our starting point. So I'm going to go up
project templates, move
to project template. And now if I press VOJ
in collection, songwriter button,
it jumps me into the collection area. Now I'm going to use a songwriter template as my starting point, but as I VO left or right through here, you'll see that there are other templates.
Electronic button.
So electronic,
hip hop button.
Hip hop. So I just VO left. I think hip hop's the first one.
Hip hop button.
Yep, it is. So if I VO right.
Electronic, songwriter, orchestral button.
Yep, orchestral. And you have a couple other ones in here. So depending on what you're doing, if it's EDM, if it's hip hop, if it's singer-songwritery, one of these templates will probably be a good place to start. So I'm going to go with songwriter. I'm going to VO left.
Songwriter button.
That's songwriter. So once you're on that, you can stop interacting with the collections area.
Out of collection, one item.
And VO right.
Expanded, disclosure triangle, details.
And then this expanded area here, if it says collapse, you can VO space on it to get to where it says expanded and see these details. And the first thing it's going to give us is a description of the template that we're using.
An ideal writing studio with drums, bass, and premium amps together with vocal tracks. Use musical grid, checkbox.
So use musical grid, that just basically means your project's going to be in bars and beats. Now you can set it up to see bars and beats and minutes and seconds, but when you use period and comma, it's going to move you in bars and beats. And that's the way I generally think it should be if you're working on a music project. So I'm going to leave it on bars and beats.
96, tempo, slider.
You can interact with the slider to change the tempo. I'm going to leave it on 96 because I'm probably going to be setting the tempo on a project by project basis. So I'm going to leave it here. But if you interact with the slider, you can set the tempo up with VO left you can set the tempo up with VO right. You can set the tempo down with VO left, and you can move in small increments of 1 using VO shift left and right. If you just use VO left, it's going to move you up or down by 10 increments when you use VO left and right. So as we move on from here,
Tap tempo button.
We have tap tempo, and this is where if you just VO space on this 5 times, it will set the tempo at the rate of which you hit VO space on this. There is a way to set tap tempo once you have a project started as well. There's a tutorial down on the channel. I'll link that in the pinned comment in the description below.
C major, key signature, pop-up button.
This is where you can set the key signature. If you know what key your song is going to be in, you can set this here. So this, once again, is something I will probably set on a project-by-project basis and do this in the control bar group instead of applying this to my template by default. So as we move past this,
/4, time signature, scrubber groove.
We have our time signature, same deal. I'm going to leave this on the default because I'm going to set that most likely in the control bar group per project.
ATH, M50's USB, audio input, pop-up button.
Now, this is where you can choose your audio input and output. So right now I'm just using my Audio-Technica ATH M50X USB version of those headphones. And so that's what's going to show as my input and output if I view right.
ATH, M50's USB, audio output, pop-up button.
So you see that's shown up as the input and output. So whatever your interface is, you probably want to set that to both the input and output. If it's a Scarlett or an Evo or whatever it might be, you know, Universal Audio, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so let's view right past here. Now, most of the stuff after this point is not anything that I would ever really mess with on a project-by-project basis, really. So I'm just going to kind of skim over that stuff. It has to do with frame rate for your project, if you're going to be syncing it with video, and whether you want to turn on surround sound or spatial audio or any of that stuff. Not stuff I really mess with. So I'm just going to view right past all that and get to the button to move on to the next step. So let's view right.
44.1, sample rate, pop-up button.
One last thing here, though, is the sample rate, and that's something that you may want to change. Now, I personally like to work at 96 kilohertz, so I'll set it to that. But if you're just getting started and you don't really have a reason to work at 96 kilohertz, I wouldn't worry about it. I'll just leave this at 44.1. But I'm
Menu, 48, 88.96, 96.
Set that to 96 kilohertz for myself. Now, everything after this point is kind of what I said before. It's not stuff I usually worry about. So I'm just going to be right past that.
Kilohertz, 25, FPS. Off, spatial audio, 5.1. Open an existing project, cancel button, choose, default button.
All right, there we go, choose. I'm going to view space on choose and give this a second.
Now in, Untitled Aid Logic, library, group. Control bar, toolbar, now in, Untitled Aid Logic, now in, Untitled Aid Logics, tracks, window, control bar, toolbar.
All right, so here we are in the project. Now, one thing that I think we need to kind of take care of first is the control bar. So there's a couple things I want to do in the control bar and the control bar group, and that has to do with just making it have the stuff that I'm going to need to access visible, and that way anytime I create a new project, all that stuff is going to be visible. But more importantly, the stuff that we have key commands for that we're never going to come into the control bar to use, like say showing or hide in the library, showing or hide in the inspector, things of that nature, I'm going to turn all of those things off so that we don't have to navigate through them like to get in our control bar to do something. So first thing first, I'm going to go into the control bar group to customize the control bar group, and then I'll customize the control bar overall. So I'm going to interact with the control bar.
In control bar, toolbar, 25 items, library, checked, checkbox.
And now I'm going to view right.
Inspect quick tool, smart mix editor, rewind, forward, stop, play, record, cycle, control bar, group.
And I just veer right over to the control bar group. I'm going to interact with this.
In control bar, group. 6 items, 1 bar, 1 beat, 1 division, 1 tick, playhead position, scrubber group.
And the first thing I'm going to do is just jump to the end of the control bar group. So I'm going to do VO end, that's VO FN, and the right arrow if you're using a keyboard with a laptop layout. So VO end.
Beats and project, large, pop-up button.
And there we go, beats and project. I'm going to VO space on this.
Menu, 13 items, check mark, beats ampersand, project, large.
And set this to custom.
Beats ampersand, beats, time, custom. Closing menu, custom, pop-up button.
All right, so there we go. So I have that set to custom. And now what this will do is it shows a lot more stuff in here. It's, if I VO left.
/16, pop-up button.
That's the division value that it's now shown us.
Project tempo menu. Project tempo pop-up 0009 1 bar 1 beat 1 division 1 tick. Play 4/4. Time signature. Pop 96.0000. Tempo slider.
And one thing that I like about this view is it shows the tempo in 3 digits, 96.000. So that way you can see if, like, say, if you tap in a tempo, you can see if the tempo is like 96.582 or something like that. And it gives you the ability to set it back to just be 96 even or 100 even or whatever, which is the way I prefer to do it after I tap in a tempo. I'll just set it to round up or down to the nearest value that doesn't have anything after the decimal point. So that's one of the reasons I like to have this visible here. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come out of the control bar group.
Out of control bar group.
I'm going to show you how you can customize this. So actually, before I do that, I'm going to hit VO Home, jump back to the beginning of the control bar.
Library, checkbox.
Because if you remember, I had to VO right past all this stuff to get to the control bar group, right? The library.
Inspector, checkbox.
Inspector.
Quick help, uncheck, checkbox.
And all of these things are things we have keyboard commands for, like Y shows and hides the library. The letter I shows and hides the inspector. So there's really no reason we're ever going to come in here as blind users to adjust the stuff, right? We're just going to use the key commands for it. So there's no reason to have to navigate through all this stuff to get to the control bar group, right? So let's go ahead and customize this. I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you do VO Shift M, that'll bring up the context menu, and you want to choose Customize from this context menu. So I'm going to press VO Shift M.
Menu, 3 items. Customize control bar and display ellipsis.
And I VO down, Customize is the first option as I VO down on this context menu. So if I VO space on this,
66 items, views.
It brings up this dialog box, and as I VO left to right through
Transport.
here.
Display. Modes and functions. Library, checkbox.
So you see libraries checked. So if I uncheck that, the library button won't be visible in the control bar anymore.
Go to beginning, unchecked, checkbox.
And some of these are unchecked, but you can VO left or right through here and just go through and turn off anything that you don't necessarily want to have visible in the display. And then as you get to the bottom,
revert button. Save as default button.
You have save as default. Now, once you VO space on this, this is going to set this as your default. So every time you create a new project, it's going to come up with those defaults. But better yet, every time you open an old project, you can do VO Shift M on the control bar and set it to, apply default, and it will apply those settings to old projects as well when you do that. So go through this and turn off stuff you don't need, and then save it as default. Now, I'm just going to hit escape on this because I've already done this.
4/4.
So what I'm going to do is if I
96.00000.
If I VO Shift M on the control bar, it looks like it put me back in the control bar group here. I'm going to do VO Shift M.
Menu, 3 items. Customize control bar, apply defaults.
Go to apply defaults.
Untitled 8.
And so now that I've selected
1 hour.
that,
Playhead out of control bar group.
Just came out of the control bar group. I stop interacting with that. I'm going to VO left.
Play, uncheck, play, uncheck.
You see, I only have the play button visible. And then if I VO right.
Control bar group. Replace, uncheck, checkbox, auto punch, uncheck, tuner, dimmed, uncheck.
See, those are the only options I have visible in my control bar group. I got rid of everything else that I don't need. Now, why is the play button there when we have the space bar for play? That is something you'll find out in the future. But for now, I'm going to leave it at that. So this is my control bar customized. Now, the next thing I'm going to customize.
Out of control bar, toolbar.
Come out of control bar.
Library, group.
I'm going to hide the library with the letter Y.
Tracks, group.
Because I don't really want the library to be there all the time, because whenever I want to get into a library, I can just hit Shift Y, it puts me in the library, I find the patch I want, then I just hit the letter Y to hide the library, it puts me back on the tracks group. So there's no reason to keep the library open in the interface at all times. But what I do keep open in the interface is the inspector.
Tracks, toolbar.
And I'll stop interacting
group.
here.
Inspector, group.
All right, so inspector, right? Let's interact with the inspector.
In inspector, group. 8 items, expanded, disclosure triangle.
What I want to do is make sure that both the region inspector and the track inspector are expanded. That way, if I need to come in here to adjust anything, I don't have to expand or collapse the inspectors at any point in time. So you see that says expanded already.
Expanded, disclosure triangle.
So the region inspector is already expanded, because if I VO right,
region,
you see region.
Drummer, edit text.
And we have a drummer track selected.
Table, no selection.
And then you have the table, that's the region inspector, right? So that's the table we'll interact with to adjust parameters for the region. Now, if we VO right from here.
Collapsed, disclosure triangle.
That one says collapse. I'm going to VO space on it so it's expanded.
Expanded.
And now if I view right,
Track.
track, so this is a track inspector.
SoCal. Edit text.
SoCal is the name of the drummer track that's selected by default.
Table. No selection.
And now we see the table for the track inspector. So I want to make sure that both inspector tables are visible at all times. So I'm going to leave those expanded. All right, so let's come out of the inspector. I'm going to stop interacting.
Out of inspector. Group.
I'm going to view right.
Tracks. Group. Session player. Group.
And we have the session player editor visible. So we have right now the control bar, the inspector, the tracks group, and the session player editor. Now, I like to, a lot of times when I can get away with it, just use up and down arrows to navigate through my track headers instead of having to use view up or down. And when you have a editor like the session player editor open, it can interfere with the focus for VoiceOver when you're trying to up or down arrow through your track. So I like to hide the editor as well. So I'm going to press the letter E.
Hide editor.
And that hides the editor. So now we just have control bar, inspector, and a track group.
Tracks, group, tracks, toolbar, tracks, group, out of tracks.
I'll show
group.
you that. I just came out of a track group. If I view home.
Control bar, toolbar.
So you have control bar, view right,
Inspector,
inspector,
group, tracks, group, tracks, group.
So I have a pretty clean interface here, and this is the way I like it. So next up, we're going to take a look at what tracks you may want to consider including in your template as how to group those tracks together. If you want to discuss this more, leave a comment below or jump on the Logic Band Discord server and let's talk about it over there as well. You can find all the info you need to join the Logic Band Discord server at logic.band/discord. And if you'd like to help grow the channel, help support the channel, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And you can always become a member by hitting the join button if you're watching this on YouTube or visiting logic.band/members. And if you become a channel member, you'll get access to some bonus tutorials, some in-depth courses and stuff. I'm constantly working on adding stuff to the members area. So definitely a good place to go. You can support the channel, send some value back to Logic Band, receive some value in exchange for that with some additional tutorials. That's it for this one. As always, until next time, happy recording.